Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's Stay-at-Home Lecture Series. I'm Tim Nutt, Director of the UAMS Historical Research Center, and I'm glad to have you here with us today. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure there will probably be a few other people who show up, and we'll just let them into the room as they come in. So glad to have you all here today. Just a little bit of tell you a little bit about the Historical Research Center and the Society for the History of Medicine and Health Professions, which is the sponsor of this series. And the Historical Research Center is the archives division of the UAMS library. So we collect all types of materials that document the institutional history of UAMS. So think of all the like annual reports, photographs, programs, commencement programs, things like that, that document the daily activities, the history of UAMS. And then we also, as a second component, we also just preserve the history of the health and the health sciences in Arkansas. So throughout Arkansas. So materials, archival materials, again, like photographs, correspondence, artifacts, anything that deals with the medical history or health sciences history of Arkansas, we're interested in collecting. As I mentioned, we are part of the UAMS library. We're located in the library on the 5th floor on the UAMS campus in Little Rock. And I'd love to have you come down for a tour sometimes. We can give you a tour of our facilities and show you some of the interesting collections that we hold. As I mentioned, the Society for the History of Medicine and Health Professions is the sponsor of the Stay-at-Home Lecture Series. And the Society is a support organization for the Historical Research Center. It was established in 1981. And it provides all sorts of support for us, including programming like the Stay-at-Home Lecture Series, which was started in 2020 as at the beginning of the pandemic. So programming like this, we also have in-person programming such as book signings, lectures, in-person lectures, and then an annual dinner that we're hoping to have this fall. But then the Society also provides some financial support to the Historical Research Center by helping us purchase books and archival collections and artifacts just to augment our regular budget and to collect materials that we might not have been able to afford otherwise or not been made aware of. They also make us aware of materials that might be appropriate for our collection. If you're not a member of the Society, I hope you'll consider joining. The dues are relatively inexpensive. They're not relatively inexpensive. They are inexpensive. $15 for an individual, $25 for family. And you'll be put on the mailing list. You'll get invitations to the annual dinner and all sorts of benefits joining the Society. And in addition to the benefits of joining the Society and getting invitations to the events, you're also supporting the Historical Research Center and our mission in preserving the health sciences history of Arkansas. So I hope you'll consider joining. The URL for the Society page is up on your screen. So you can go there, download, or actually you can fill out your membership form online. Or you can bypass that and just go to PayPal at paypal.me/shmhp and just pay your dues directly online. And that way you don't have to write a check or anything. So hope you'll consider doing that and helping us out in our mission. Now, the Stay-at-Home Lecture Series, it occurs the first Thursday of every month from 12 to 1 p.m. And next month we have a good presentation coming up on Dr. Roscoe G. Jennings, who is one of the founders of UAMS, and Mary Kate Lamb, who is at the Ashley County Library. She was a graduate student in the UALR Public History program and wrote her thesis on Dr. Jennings. And so she will be talking about her research and what she discovered about Dr. Jennings and his role in establishing the medical school in 1879. So I hope you'll join us on June 6th from 12 to 1 for that presentation. The link that you used to join today's presentation is the same link that you're going to use to join next month's presentation, and any presentation that we have on Zoom usually has the same link. So you can continue to using that link for all of our events. I do send out an email regarding the stay-at-home lectures. If you are not on that email list, but you would like to be, you can please just send me an email and I will add you to the list to receive that. My email is tgnutt@uams.edu, and I'll be glad to add you to the list. So today I am glad to talk about Dr. Neil Compton, a physician and environmental activist. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Compton, he is very well known throughout Arkansas, especially up in Northwest Arkansas, not only for his skills as a physician, but also, and maybe even more so, as an environmental activist, especially when it comes to the preservation of the Buffalo River. So today I'm very pleased to be able to talk about Dr. Compton. I had the pleasure of working with his daughter when I worked at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, and just learned so much from her about her father and his work in the preservation of the natural rivers and natural environment in Arkansas. So Dr. Compton, actually, he is, as I mentioned, really well known in the environmental circles in Arkansas. He casts a long shadow in that field from in the 1960s, 1970s, and all the way up into the 80s and 90s. And throughout that time, especially in the 60s and 70s, numerous projects were being proposed in Arkansas that would have dramatically altered the natural environment. One of those was the proposal to dam the Buffalo River, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. But Dr. Compton's involvement in these conservation movements resulted in so many watershed moments in Arkansas environmental history, including the Buffalo River. And as you learn more and more about Dr. Compton, you can really see the love that he had for the environment and his passion in protecting it. So let's learn a little bit more about him and about his work in conservation efforts in Arkansas. So Neil Ernest Compton was born in Falling Springs Flats near Decatur in Benton County on August 1st, 1912. He was the son of David Compton, a farmer, and his wife, Ida Wilmoth. As it was back then, outside of Bentonville, which is the county seat of Benton County, and Rogers, Benton County is very rural. It was during Neil's childhood in this area that he came to really appreciate nature and all that it offered. And I've sort of highlighted on the map about the approximate location of Falling Springs Flats. I couldn't really find it on a map anywhere, but sort of figuring out, taking clues. It's somewhere near Decatur, and between Decatur and Bentonville, and around near Highfield. So somewhere in that red circle is Falling Springs. So Neil Compton, as I mentioned, he was born in 1912. He had a sister, Edra, and Neil attended elementary school at Ozark, just outside Gentry in Benton County. Now here you can see evidence of one of Neil's first writing assignments displayed on the front porch of his grandmother's house. And he was 6 years old in this photo. So you can see a pansy, a drawing of a flower, might be a foreshadowing of his environmental work later on. He drew a daisy there. He wrote his name. So really early on, I think, I don't know if this is true or not, but I think he was really interested in the environment, even at the age of 6. And so this is one of my favorite pictures of him. Now, he attended Bentonville schools. He graduated in Bentonville High School in 1931. He is located on your screen. It's in the very back. He's on the far right, um, in the back, sort of the tall, slender man in the back of that photo. So that class had 29 students in it when he graduated in 1931. And after his graduation, he began studies at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, not too far from his home in Bentonville. He graduated from the university in 1935 with degrees in zoology and geology. That same year, he married Laureen Putnam. Now, Putnam was his high school sweetheart and hiking and canoeing partner. And later, the couple had 3 children, William, Edra, and Ellen. So even in college, and I would think even beforehand, Dr. Compton was really involved in the environment, canoeing, going hiking in the Ozark Mountains. So he really came to appreciate the Ozark Mountains and all that it offered as far as being a part of his home environs. Now later, after he graduated from the U of A, he moved to Little Rock to begin his medical education at the University School of Medicine. At this time, the School of Medicine was still part of the University of Arkansas. It was not a separate entity. So Compton came down. He entered medical school. This was the medical school at that time, located at 13th and McAlmont Streets. Sort of, if you know where the Little Rock School of Law is, UALR School of Law is, that's about where it was. The building itself, this was actually a new building. It had only been completed a few months before Compton began his medical school education. On the first floor of this building was the Isaac Folsom Clinic, which was a clinic to administer medical services to the indigent and poorer community of Little Rock. The second floor housed laboratories, administration, the cafeteria, and library. And this building on the third floor were the departments of pathology and bacteriology. And the fourth floor, the departments of chemistry and physiology. And the fifth floor was the departments of anatomy, histology, and embryology. And the students, the medical students, they would do their clinical work at the city hospital, which was located right next door. You can kind of see it just to the left of your screen, just on the other side of the building. Now, this building, just to say, this was the 4th location in the history of the school, and it would stay at this location at 13th and McAlmont Street until 1956, when new facilities were opened in West Markham, which is where we are today. Now, when Compton started in 1935, he was one of 98 students. The semester began on October 2nd, 1935, and he paid $50 for tuition per semester, plus annual deposits ranging from $20 to $50 for the use of the library and labs. So the total cost per semester was approximately $200. There was also a $5 student activity fee, and Compton lived only a few blocks from the medical school and likely paid about $30 to $40 in rent a month. The population in Little Rock at this time was around 88,000, a far cry from Bentonville's population at the time of about 2,300. So it was a big shift in population when Compton came to Little Rock for his medical education. Now, in his first year of school, His classes consisted of histology, chemistry, and anatomy. It was noted for histology that every student must keep a carefully illustrated notebook. And unfortunately, his notebooks did not survive, or I was unable to find them. But his collection of papers, which includes some of his medical schoolwork, is housed at special collections at the University of Arkansas. But I think what an interesting artifact that would be if his notebooks survived and we could see, when he was drawing his drawings for the histology course. I think it would have been really interesting to see that. Now, for anatomy, each student was required to dissect the lateral half of the human body with the exception of the brain. About 3/4 of the time was to be spent in the lab, and Compton would have taken anatomy dissection in this lab using these tables designed by UAMS professor Dr. Jeff Banks. So these were made for the anatomy class, and they were in use from about 1938 until 1992. Now, after receiving his degree in 1939 and completing his residency at Cooper Hospital in Camden, New Jersey, Compton came back to Arkansas. Now, for his first job, he served as a county health officer in Washington and Bradley counties, two very, very different counties. Of course, Washington up in the Ozarks and Bradley County down in the southern part of the state near the Delta. But this work was especially rewarding for him working for the county health department because Compton believed that all Arkansans should have access to health care. Now, later on, he worked at St. Vincent's Infirmary in Little Rock, and at this time, the infirmary was located at 10th and High Streets, which close to the School of Medicine. So this is where he worked after he finished up his county health duties. He came to work for St. Vincent's Infirmary in Little Rock. The hospital had a capacity of 225 beds. So he would have gotten a lot of experience at the infirmary here. Now, during World War II, he went into the Navy. He served in the Navy's Medical Corps and was stationed in Guadalcanal. After the war, he returned to Benton County and opened his medical practice where he specialized in gynecology and obstetrics. There, he became a leader in Bentonville, and many have stated that he probably delivered the majority of the babies in Benton County during the 1950s and 1960s. He was said to have been a caring doctor with a keen sense of humor. Now, after Dr. Compton moved back to Benton County, he lived near Crystal Springs, the Crystal Springs on the outskirts of Bentonville. There, he collected, he sort of built his garden up, and he would go out throughout the Ozarks, and he would collect and transplant native species from the Ozarks onto his property. So he was really building up his property with native species from the Ozarks. He continued to operate his medical practice, and as he was doing that, he was becoming more and more involved in conservation efforts in the Ozarks. Now, the Crystal Springs Gardens, where that was located, he later sold that land to the Walton family, the Waltons of Walmart, and the site eventually became the location of Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. And the name Crystal Bridges is a callback to Crystal Springs. And you'll notice on the map that, this is a map that Dr. Compton drew, and you'll notice that he had Crystal Springs Gardens noted on the map. You can see the Crystal Springs there. That's about where the museum is located now. And so Dr. Compton had a vision for a botanical garden way back in the 60s. And of course, Crystal Bridges purchased this land. They built this wonderful museum. which was completed in 2011. Now, another one of Dr. Compton's projects was the Buffalo River. He absolutely loved being on the Buffalo River, canoed on the Buffalo River. As a child, he would often float the river. And in the 1960s, he was very chagrined to learn about plans to control the free-flowing river. So at that time, the Buffalo River was one of the last remaining free-flowing rivers in the United States. It had not had any dams on it in its history. But that was the thinking at this time, or the proposals were coming out, that they wanted to dam the Buffalo. For most of his childhood, the Buffalo River had been part, or his childhood and adult life, the Buffalo River had been part of Dr. Compton's life. So he really truly believed he was felt to help to protect the environment and to oppose the dams on the Buffalo. Now, during this time, Compton and other conservationists, they really grew concerned about the continued threat to Arkansas's natural environment. The Buffalo River and other rivers throughout Arkansas and pristine areas around the state were marked for change by the Corps of Engineers. Authorized by a 1938 flood control bill, this came out of the 1937 flood. You always hear about the 27 flood. The 1937 flood was almost as devastating as the one 10 years earlier. So in 1938, the Corps wanted to prevent another flood from happening. And so Congress authorized this flood control bill, which allowed the Corps of Engineers to propose dams on the rivers in Arkansas and across the United States. And that included the Buffalo River. And of course, they had already done this on other dams in Arkansas, including the Upper White River at Bull Shoals in 1951 and Greer's Ferry on the Little Red River in 1963. The Corps not only wanted to regulate the flow of water, but also to provide hydroelectric power to northern Arkansas. So not only did they think that it would be able to control flooding in the area, they also saw it as a way to provide electricity to the mountains of Arkansas. To combat the Corps of Engineers' threats, Compton and others sought support for the preservation of Arkansas's natural areas outside of the state. In May 1962, Compton floated the Buffalo River with United States Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas, who is a noted conservationist. Following the float, the Ozark Society was established with its mission to protect the state's environment. Dr. Compton was named its first president. With Compton as its leader, the Ozark Society led the fight to keep the dams off the Buffalo and other rivers, such as the Strawberry River the Strawberry and Cache, both in Northeast Arkansas. The Ozark Society is still in existence today and continues to be a leader in environmental efforts. This time, though, right when they were proposing to dam the Buffalo, the Ozark Society just got started. It had just been established, specifically for the purpose of opposing the dam on the Buffalo. Now, the environmental threat that this caused, this environmental threat rather, galvanized the Ozark Society and like-minded individuals like Dr. Compton. But it also really got the ire of George Fisher, who was a noted political cartoonist. His cartoons were in the various newspapers around the state. He's most known for being the political cartoonist for the Arkansas Gazette. Fisher drew a number of cartoons criticizing the Corps of Engineers and their plans for damming the Buffalo. He lampooned the Corps and their goal to, quote, improve, end quote, Arkansas by bulldozing and damming the natural state. And you can see that here in the cartoon on your screen, where they're trying to gut the Buffalo. Just that was the feeling that most people had, that the Corps of Engineers just wanted to gut Arkansas's environment. Now, Dr. Compton did a lot of speaking on his opposition for the damming of the Buffalo. He tried all sorts of things to sort of engage the public's interest in this event and help him oppose the damming of the Buffalo. He even put out sort of little mini documentaries. They were really informational videos about the Buffalo River and other environmental issues in Arkansas. I'm going to show you just a little bit of this video. It's called Opportunity for Arkansas. It was filmed in 1963. Dr. Compton narrates the film. And he didn't just narrate it. He wrote the script, he filmed it, and he edited the film. And so this was included in his papers at Special Collections at the University of Arkansas, and it was digitized and it was restored and digitized in 2011. So just a brief view of this video.
Railway Hill, canoe club travelers bound for a float on the Buffalo River come upon the result of man's use of his most ancient tool of destruction. Down from the Stone Age has come the custom of burning the landscape, and here we see another of a man-made desert. But after the fire, nature has laid her hand on these tortured hills, and wild azaleas have covered them with beauty beyond description.
So just a brief a look at that filmed Opportunity for Arkansas. As I mentioned, it was produced in 1963. It has been restored. It's available the whole film is available for viewing on YouTube. So if you just type in Opportunity for Arkansas, University of Arkansas Libraries, you'll be able to find that video and watch it in its entirety if you'd like. And I think Janet Parsh is on here watching today, and Janet Parsh, when she worked at Special Collections at Fayetteville, she was the lead on getting that film restored through a grant and making it more available for people to see. So it's a really interesting timepiece looking at what the Ozarks looked like at the time and the plans that the Corps had in mind for the state. Excuse me. Despite the positive publicity, the Corps of Engineers continued to make plans for dams on the Buffalo. They advanced the idea of 2 dams on the river, one near Gilbert in Searcy County and the other near its mouth. George Fisher continued to publicly chastise the Corps through political cartoons, in stark contrast to public officials who said nothing. So this included the congressman, James Trimble, who was the 3rd congressional congressman, and that included Northwest Arkansas, Governor Orville Faubus. They were all very, very quiet on the subject. Now, each side had their supporters. You had the people who were against damming the Buffalo and wanted to save it and save its free-flowing nature. But then on the other side, you had people who wanted dams on the Buffalo because they thought it would bring economic opportunity to the area. Of course, it would bring electricity to areas and just sort of improve the whole area in general. Advocates who thought damming the river would benefit the area formed the Buffalo River Improvement Association, headquartered in Marshall and Searcy County. These supporters thought the dams would bring economic and infrastructure development to the rural and impoverished areas in the Buffalo River area. They urged the Corps to move ahead and dam the Buffalo. The Ozark Society, though, had its own supporters and encouraged Arkansas's politicians at the state and national level to save the Buffalo. In 1965, Governor Orville Faubus helped the conservation cause by stating publicly against damming the Buffalo and told the Corps that he would not support such a project. Without his support, the project died, much to the delight of Dr. Compton and other members of the Ozark Society. Governor Faubus solidified his support of the river by creating the Lost Valley State Park in 1967. An earlier state park, called the Buffalo River State Park, was established in 1938, curiously the same year as the flood control legislation was passed, authorizing the Corps of Engineers to dam the rivers. With support at the state level garnered, Dr. Compton and the Ozark Society made plans to garner even more support through the Arkansas U.S. Legislative Delegation. And their goal was to incorporate the buffalo into the national park system. Now, as a side note, despite the loss of support on Governor Faubus on the Buffalo River project, the Corps of Engineers continued to propose dams on other rivers in Arkansas, including the Saline River, the Cache River, and the Strawberry River. Now, we mentioned about the Lost Valley State Park, and it's for Dr. Compton had even thought, had the idea for the Buffalo River to be part of the national park system as far back as 1960. Writing to his daughter Ellen, Dr. Compton laid out his thoughts about the project. Quote, "The Nature Conservancy, which is a nationwide organization in the sort of endeavor that its name applies, has asked me to become chairman of the Lost Valley Project. The purpose is to purchase and preserve that scenic feature. The present president is going out west, and I felt that I couldn't turn them down and will have a try at it. I have, in fact, a lot of bigger ideas than just the Lost Valley. I am going to try to sell somebody on the idea of the Buffalo Gorge National Park and include Hemden Hollow, Valines Bluff, Rocky Bottom, Marble Falls, and many other interesting spots over there. It was tried once before by a guy named Advantus Green when he was head of the Parks Commission, and it didn't work out, but it won't hurt to try again. It will be an interesting activity for me anyhow." So the Ozark Society, led by Dr. Compton, continued to advocate for the preservation of the Buffalo River and sponsored float trips that continually brought high-level publicity and high-profile figures to the state, including the famed ornithologist Roger Torrey Peterson. Now, during the late 1960s and early 1970s, Representative John Paul Hammerschmidt, who had been recently elected to represent Arkansas's 3rd District, which included northern Arkansas and the Buffalo River region, indicated that he would support the idea of a national park designation for the Buffalo River. His predecessor, James Trimble, was always opposed to preserving the buffalo. He was in favor of damming the buffalo. Arkansas's 2 senators, J.W. Fulbright and John L. McClellan, were also on board on preserving the buffalo. Representative Hammerschmidt introduced the first Buffalo National River legislation in 1967, but it wasn't until 1971 that the final legislation was introduced. Congressman Hammerschmidt, along with Dr. Compton, is credited with saving the Buffalo River. Hearings on the river were scheduled on the bill for late 1971. So in anticipation of that, Dr. Compton organized a chartered bus in October 1971 The chartered bus was nicknamed the Jubilee Bus, to attend the congressional hearings on the Buffalo River in Washington, D.C. During the hearings, Dr. Compton included commentary by the American Medical Association on the role of physicians in conservation. He noted that an unpolluted environment was essential for good health. Quote, in the years during which I have been identified as a conservationist involved in an effort to salvage some of the remaining natural beauty of my part of the country, my position has been questioned by a few as to why a physician should be involved in such matters. Some believe that I should be concerned with human physiology, pathology, and the treatment of various ailments, and not with the problems of the world in general in which I live. First, I would like to say that I am not alone. Many doctors of medicine have been involved in this very subject, and I will continue to be as long as our profession exists. I believe that all of us engaged in the treatment of human illness are aware of the fact that body, mind, and emotions are all intertwined in such a way that they cannot be separated. Almost all human afflictions are definitely affected by tension, anxiety, and frustrations, which factors become increasingly a part of our daily lives as technology and artificial existence become compounded. Thus, more and more each year, we seek out the undisturbed, remote, and beautiful places away from the crowds of people, the unending miles of pavement and heavy traffic, and the hurly-burly of urban living, which has practically engulfed us. Along the Buffalo River in its canyons and on its gravel bars, we may still seek spiritual, emotional, and physical reconstitution. And here those of us who know it seek to turn from the stress of our daily lives. The need for such places for all of us has been most eloquently stated by the Doctors of America, speaking as a group. They said that doctors care about the health of the body that you live on. A sick environment can make people sick. It can undo everything a doctor works for. There's no use our trying to keep people well in a dead land, end quote. Very powerful statement by Dr. Compton, and just one of the many statements that were made during the hearings on the Buffalo River. Now, on that strong statement and others, Congress voted for the purpose of conserving and interpreting an area containing unique scenic and scientific features and preserving as a free-flowing stream for the benefit of enjoyment of present and future generations. They established the nation's first national river in February 1972. It was signed into law by President Richard Nixon on March 1st of that same year. The Ozark Society members celebrated. Today, 135 miles of the 150-mile-long river is included in the national park system and averages over 800,000 visitors a year, bringing millions of tourism dollars into the area. Dr. Compton and others had accomplished a great feat. There are a lot of people who didn't think that it would ever happen. As native Arkansan and folk singer Jimmy Driftwood sang, the Buffalo River was Arkansas's gift to the nation, America's gift to the world, and many truly believe that to this day. Now, after this, Dr. Compton did not rest on his laurels, but continued to be involved in conservation efforts and opposition efforts to additional Corps of Engineers projects, including the Cache River channelization in the 1980s and the proposed dam on the Strawberry River in the late 1970s. He closed his medical practice in 1975 and concentrated on conservation fights after that. He wrote about the battle that resulted in the Buffalo River being named a national river in his book, Battle for the Buffalo River, published by the University of Arkansas Press. And that book is still available for purchase through the press. He documented the beauty of the Ozarks and the Buffalo River in his books, The High Ozarks and the Buffalo River in black and white. And it wasn't just our environmental heritage that Dr. Compton fought for. He was also involved in historic preservation and local history, serving as president of the Benton County Historical Association in the 1970s. Throughout his life, Dr. Compton was awarded numerous awards, including the first annual Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Award presented by the U.S. Congress. He was named an honorary National Park Ranger and inducted into numerous halls of fame. He died on February 10th, 1999, but he was remembered for his role as an environmentalist and his strong dedication, leadership, and tenacity in protecting the buffalo for generations. And I think George Fisher's cartoon about Compton and the Buffalo River is very fitting and very true. Now, another honor, the Compton House at UAMS and the College of Medicine, one of their academic houses honors Dr. Compton and the Compton House, and the symbolism on the shield honors his dedication to the preservation of Arkansas's natural state. So you'll see the blue and green, the environment, blue for water, green for nature. You have the bear, again, for nature, the Latin motto, which translate together, we are strong. And the quote that goes along, it doesn't necessarily go with the Compton House, but I think it's appropriate. The challenge goes on. There are other lands and rivers, other wilderness areas to save and to share with all. I challenge you to step forward and protect and care for the wild places you love best. So I think when they named one of the houses after Dr. Compton, his daughter Ellen, she was so tickled by that. And I'm just so proud that the UAMS honored Dr. Compton with naming one of their academic houses after him. And I just think it's so appropriate to do so. Not only, his legacy as a physician, but as an environmentalist, and especially with his remarks during the hearings on the Buffalo River in 1972 about the correlation between our physical health and the environmental health. I think that's just so important, and I think it's just wonderful that UAMS recognized Dr. Compton's leadership in that. Now, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Compton's daughter Ellen at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. We both worked in special collections. Ellen inherited her father's love of Arkansas history and the environment. She hiked with him as a child. She helped him gather those plants to transplant to his garden in the 1960s. And up until her death in 2020, she continued to be involved in environmental efforts and in the Ozark Society. And Ellen was herself a force to be reckoned with. And I think she probably got a lot of that from her dad. So if you'd like more information about Dr. Compton or the Ozark Society or the effort to save the Buffalo River, Special Collections at the University of Arkansas has a digital collection online for you to peruse. It came out of an event that we held in 2012, 40, 50, 100. Let's see if I can remember this. 40th anniversary for, I can't remember what the 40th is for. 50th is, I think, the Ozark Society, and then 100th was Dr. Compton's birthday. Someone will be able to chap in the chat what I'm not remembering for that 40th. But if you'd like to view that, there are a lot more photographs on this digital collection, documents, and just a history of the Ozark Society. Feel free to do that. You can go to, I have the URL on your screen there. If you don't have time to write that down, you can just put in Digital Collections, University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, and it'll take you to the page and you can find it from there. There's also a permanent exhibit on Dr. Compton at Compton Gardens in Bentonville. in that exhibit, you can learn greater detail about his medical career and environmental efforts as well. And that's Compton Gardens at the Compton Peel House, right next to Crystal Bridges. And there's a path from the Compton Peel House all the way over to Crystal Bridges. Really a nice walk through the gardens and woods. So I hope you'll have an opportunity to do that at some point. And with that, ending the talk on Dr. Compton, great person who left such a really big legacy. And if there are any questions, 40th was the establishment of the river. Yeah, that makes sense. I can't believe I didn't remember that. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to take any questions. If you want to just use the chat feature. And I think we had one comment earlier on. Someone mentioned that was just about the anatomy rooms. How long was his service in Bradley County? I don't think it was very long. I don't have the exact dates, but I think it was 2-year max. I don't think it was very long at all. I can get that for you, Malin, and send that to you. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Kim?
Yeah.
Do any of the buildings still exist? The medical building or that first building on your presentation screen for the Medical History Center? Does that building exist?
No, that was the original building that was used for the medical school when it started in 1879. It started out as a restaurant, and then it was converted into use for the medical school. And it went through different iterations, and then it was demolished in, I think, 65 as part of urban renewal. And then the other one where Dr. Compton went to medical school, that one was torn down. I don't know exactly when that one was demolished, but that one's no longer there either.
And St. Vincent's Infirmary, does any part of that building exist?
No, unfortunately. Now there is part of I don't know if you saw it, if you remember in the postcard, but there was like an arch that said St. Vincent's, a wrought iron arch that said St. Vincent's Infirmary. And it was on a stone pillars, had the arch over. That is at that's at the new one here at the corner of Markham and University. That's on the grounds there. But unfortunately, none of those buildings exist or remain. Let's see. Had he been trying that long to get it to be a national river? Yes. Dr. Compton had been trying a long time to get the Buffalo River as a national river. So his efforts finally paid off. In 1963, well, let me rephrase that. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think he had been working a long time before that 1963 video, the Opportunity for Arkansas. That was specifically made for to stop the damming on the Buffalo River. And I think, as we saw by the 1960 letter that he wrote to his daughter Ellen, he had already thought about putting or trying to get the Buffalo River into the national park system. I don't know exactly when he started thinking that, but it was at least 3 or 4 years that he had that idea before that 1963 video.
Yes, because the Ozark Society itself was created in 1962.
Okay.
It's its first meeting there, but
okay.
It's already working behind the scenes.
And didn't the Ozark Society was mainly created or established for the Buffalo River at that point, don't you think?
That's right.
Yeah.
The stationery even shows the Ozark Society to preserve the Buffalo River.
Yeah.
to save the Buffalo River. Mhm.
It's just interesting to me that in that 1963 video, you know, before it said Opportunity for Arkansas, it said the Buffalo National River. And I'm like, that's almost 10 years before it actually became it. But obviously, he was already calling it a national.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that there was a state park, the Lost Valley State Park, that they created in 1938, and then they it took it out of the state park system. So someone needs to do research on that and find out more about that.
Both Lost Valley and Buffalo Point were offered to come into the national park system as part of the negotiation of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that Faubus was agreeable to that in order to get the national park for the buffalo.
Okay, well, that's good. Well, Faubus did a lot of bad things, not a good person in some ways, but helping with the buffalo is one of the good things he did do.
Mm-hmm. And he was very significant in getting Lost Valley to be the park, a state park, and then along the way to become the National River Park.
Yeah.
And Tim, you noted that in the College of Medicine, one of our 7 academic houses is named for Dr. Compton. I just want to point out that that is the house that our Northwest Campus students are in, and the namesake for each of our houses was chosen by our students. So it was actually the group of Northwest Arkansas students who wanted to honor Dr. Compton in that way.
Oh, good. I'm so glad that you, I had known that and I completely forgot to mention that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Because that really shows that they're, they're aware of Dr. Compton's legacy and accomplishments as a doctor and as an environmentalist. So that really, I think that's even more sort of heartwarming that it was not, nominated by the kids. The name came up by the students rather than the UAMS administration. I think that's maybe even a greater tribute to Dr. Compton. Well, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to email me if you have any comments or if you have any suggestions for future presentations, feel free to email me, tgnutt@uams.edu. This program's been recorded and it will be uploaded to the Society's YouTube channel probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so if you want to watch it again, you can forward it to people, whatever you want to do. And so thank you all for being here. Hope you'll tune in next month, June 6th, to learn about Dr. Roscoe Green Jennings and his life and career. So thank y'all very much. Y'all have a good day. We'll see you next month.